Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Be Her Village podcast. I'm Kaitlin McGreyes, and I'm here today with Sowania Germain, who is a licensed mental health counselor, and she has a specialty in maternal mental health. Welcome, Sowania. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Kaitlin.
And I have to also say congratulations to you, because you're not just here as a Be Her Village partner and as someone who serves women during their motherhood time and during their transition into parenthood, but you are also a new mom yourself. Isn't that right?
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, I have three little ones. Well, my oldest is 8, my middle one is 4, and my son, our first son, Joshua, will be 5 months tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
Thank you.
That's amazing. And I, as a mom of 3, I feel like this is a special club that we're in. It's a really hard club, but
yeah, I'm like, wow, like now I know what they were saying, that it's just best to have 4.
You know, I have heard that, and maybe we should do a poll or something. I have heard that people who have 4 kids are happier and less anxious and just generally enjoy their lives more than people who have 3 kids. But as a person who has 3 kids and who struggled and struggles, I just don't want to be the one person who has the 4th and then is really way more miserable. I'm not going to. I would be like, let me go with what the studies say, and then I would have 4 kids, and I would be like, okay, so who's gonna help me now?
Because exactly. Oh my goodness, like who is gonna help us? Like, I remember back in the day, my mom would say, like, she had a village, she had her great aunts, she had grandma, she had people in the community, and who helped. My mom is a mom of 3 as well, who helped her. Like, we'd hang out in summers and hang out. And now I'm like, where are they? Like, literally, where are they? Where's the village?
Where's the village? Yeah, I mean, it's such a good question. And I think it's like, obviously it's what I'm working on, and it's what you're working on, and it's why we've met. And there is just, as a mother these days, and as parents, quite honestly, but I think more of the burden falls on the mother or the whoever, like, the main caretaker is of the children. It is really, really difficult, more difficult, I think, now than it's ever been. We have this, like, pressure, I think, put on us by social media and by, I know, like, just the pictures of, like, perfect babies and perfect baby photo shoots and people getting their bodies back. And I'm like, I have not, to be totally blunt, and this, like, it's, a sensitive topic for me, but, like, I haven't even lost the baby weight from my 3rd baby. And she's 4.5. And it's just,
and it's okay.
Like, I don't know. I didn't snap back after any of them. I definitely, like, I think had more of a hold on my life after the first and the second. The 3rd one, like, obliterated me. She was really sick as an infant. I think I had somehow less support than I needed. And then I had even for the first 2, which is crazy because I was a doula at the time and, like, knew about the support I needed. It's just so hard, Sowania. I don't know. I mean, this is right. What are we going to do about it? This is what we're doing. We're talking about it.
Exactly.
Which is hugely important.
I mean, it's, like you said, with the social media, it definitely adds on, I think, a certain level of pressure on us as women. Mm-hmm. And moms, and in general, our society, we just, I think it's just exacerbated and heightened everything. Like, we're constantly feeling the need to be out there and to show to the world that we're doing okay. And us doing okay is putting a perfect picture out there for everyone to see. I'm fine, I'm back. And that's not the reality. And I think, I love Be Her Village, what you're doing, and you're making that awareness, that awareness is now out there, that it's okay to not know what you're doing. It's okay to not lose the 30 pounds or the last 5 pounds, 4 years postpartum, whatever, maybe, and you may gain it back. You may lose it and gain it back. Our hormones, remember, it doesn't, after you have the baby, it's not, everything is fine and everyone just puts the focus on the baby. And I think that's why I love Be Her Village, because it focuses on the mom, like, everything is done and it's just the focus on the baby, but it's more than that. How about us, the moms, and what our needs are, like our mental health, like acupuncture, like massages, like all these, like a doula, doulas are fantastic. I had a doula with my second one, and I found out so many things about like, I didn't even know I didn't know what a tongue tie was.
Yes.
And she found out that my second had a tongue tie. I'm like, what? The doctor didn't say that. And the doctor looked and denied it. I went to see a surgeon at Stony Brook Hospital, and literally was like, yeah, she has a tongue tie. Had the procedure done, boom. And she was able to latch, and I nursed her for 3 years. You know, yeah, I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah. Once you get them, you know, you work so hard to get that latch, and then a few years later, you're like, all right, how do I get them to unlatch?
Exactly. I was like, what's going on?
It's like, I always joke, like, you know, you wait for your little baby to like say mama, and you're so excited the first time they say mom, right. And then when they're 3 and they're like mom, it's like, oh my God, can you please stop? So if you don't mind, I would love to hear a little bit about your birth experiences and your parenthood experiences, and what that transition was like for you, and how that kind of piqued your interest into supporting mothers as a career.
Great question, Kaitlin. So I had my first daughter, Melania, in 2012. And when I got married, we were so excited. You know, we didn't plan for the pregnancy. You know, we got pregnant our wedding night, and we're like, okay, we're just gonna have a baby. So, you know, I was about 25 years old at the time, 26. And I was, you know, I was excited going to all my prenatal checkups as, you know, as I should. And I would say about 25 weeks in, the doctor, I went in for a checkup on my own, everything's normal. And the doctor noticed that my cervix was very thin. And so he didn't tell me that right away. I think he didn't want to scare me, and I was alone. I wasn't with any family at the checkup because it was a normal checkup that I thought. So then he advised me, he pulled me aside in his office, and he said, listen, I think you need to go home, pack a bag of clothes, and you need to meet me at the emergency room. Oh, and I was like, what do you mean? What's going on? You need to call your husband. You know, you have, you know, this condition. You have a thin cervix. It's too late for us to do a cerclage, which is a procedure where they sew your cervix when they know that you're high risk beforehand. So I was already past that window.
You were 25 weeks, you said?
Yeah, I was around like 25 weeks.
Okay. So your doctor was essentially saying that he was worried that the baby was going to come early, and you would have a very, very preemie baby. Okay.
Yeah, and I was devastated. I was hysterical. So, and at the time I wasn't practicing. I wasn't working. I was staying at home. My husband was working. So I just packed my bag. I told my husband just to be at the hospital. I didn't want to freak him out. And I remember the director OB at the hospital was like, you're possibly going to lose this baby. And I was like, what? In the labor and delivery unit. I'm like, what do you mean? And I said, I'm not going to accept that. That's what I said to him. I'm not going to accept that. He was like, what do you mean? I was like, I know that this baby is going to be fine, and I have faith that everything is going to work out. I'm going to have to center myself and have positive vibes. I did not allow anyone. So I was on bed rest for, I would say, from February of 2012 all the way to Easter.
Wow.
Every March, April. Yeah.
I just want to, I want to hear your whole story, my goodness, but I just want to like pause, and I can't imagine what that felt like at 25 weeks to be told literally the worst news. I mean, at 25 weeks, first of all, birth, you're not even like, at least I wasn't even thinking about, you know, the baby still kind of feels really far away at that point. So to be told both A, the baby could be coming any minute, any day, but B, you might lose the baby. Oh, I can't imagine how devastating that was.
It was so emotionally difficult for me. And, you know, at that time, that's when I really realized that I wanted to go into maternal mental health. I didn't have any supports. I just had someone from March of Dimes, a social worker, come and check up on me, I think, every other week. And while I was hospitalized. I was hospitalized from February, I think around Valentine's Day, all the way up until Easter Sunday. So I was there for months, and I was getting injections daily to prevent deep vein thrombosis. I was getting that. I had my body lifted. They were doing sonograms consistently to check the baby. My husband stayed in the hospital. He didn't even come home. Like when we just moved into our new places, newlyweds. We were still newlyweds still at that time, within the year, So like he would just sleep there and we would get meals. He and I, they got on Stony Brook. Stony Brook is so fantastic. I had my own suite, that was the nice part about it. But the whole process was scary. And I felt like I didn't have the support, the emotional support there. I really did. My family lived very far. They live over an hour and a half away from where we live. And then my in-laws as well, like everything, it was just like a really difficult time. My friends, all my college friends are in Boston. So they would send me, like, they would FaceTime me or send me notes and send me flowers, but that's about it. Like none of my friends had kids. I was the first one. So no one could really relate, understand what was going on or input, they just like, oh my gosh, so I was like, I'm going to like hold on to my faith. I asked my husband to bring a lot of my books home, books to the hospital room. I wrote a lot. I love to write poetry. I meditated a lot. I prayed. And I remember one nurse was like very negative. She was like, you're going to probably have this baby really early. And I had to report her to the director of head of nursing. They nipped it in the bud. I was like, I don't want no negative vibes in here. Like literally, I had peaceful music in the background. I had incense. Like I was no joke. And I just kept pushing through every day. And one OB, I love her. She's my doctor now. She's not the doctor that I had then. She was like, you know what? You could leave earlier, But they found out that I had, they did a procedure on me that a lot of women typically have.
A LEAP procedure?
Bingo.
Yes. Yeah.
So they
take out a portion of your cervix, which puts you at risk for preterm labor.
Correct.
Which
I didn't know that.
Just as my little doula brain is like just going very quickly with lots of ideas as I'm listening to the story. A few ideas. One is that the hospital, Stony Brook Hospital, is one of the best hospitals on Long Island, especially for maternity care, but just in general. But even so, there's systematic failings here in that they were taking care of the baby, they were taking care of your physical health, but nobody seemed to be addressing your mental health, the fact that your life was turned upside down, the fact that you were disconnected from your community of support, the fact that you were in fear of your child's life, the fact that there were all these unknowns and you were, maybe getting a visit once a week from actually, also there's another alarm going off from a March of Dimes social worker, which is like, do they not have mental health care like built into the hospital system, integrated fully? The second idea that I'm having is just that, and I think this will probably tie into the conversation I hope to have with you about Black maternal health and the failings there, is that shouldn't you have had a conversation with your doctor much earlier on in your pregnancy, or even when you had your LEAP procedure done, that these are the risks, that these are the things, like, did someone miss out on the cerclage window? Like, it just sounds like you were failed.
And he's a Black doctor.
Ay.
Yeah, so, it's interesting, so I switched, ironically, he was my doctor recently, a couple months ago. He wound up being, it's just weird how the circle of life works. No offense, but I had to switch doctors. I went to a different doctor. I love her. Like literally love her. She, I speak to her quite often, but I had to really like forgive him and learn to forgive, because I was really upset that how was the ball dropped here? Like where there was, and this isn't, like I said, 2012. Now I think the research has gone beyond, like from 2012 to now, we're in 2020, the end of 2020. Oh my goodness, there's so much more resources out there than there was back then, I think. So much more awareness than there was back then. But like you said, it was about the baby. We got to take care of this. We got to make sure that this baby is full term. They weren't thinking about Sowania and her mental health. The social worker at the hospital just wrote a note for me. That's it.
Right. But at the same time, like, there was even a failure on your physical health and your baby's health, because it sounds like they should have been tracking the cervix earlier, and maybe even had a discussion with you where, and this is part of like my work as a doula, is like, it's not about making right or wrong decisions, but it's about empowering the woman and bringing her into her care. So instead of you having this, like, what you thought was a standard appointment, and you're going in without your partner, without guards up, you know, not nervous about what's about to happen, and then getting slammed with, like, oh, by the way, your baby might die and you have to go to the hospital right now and live there for 2 months. Like, I can't even imagine the upheaval, and versus what it might have looked like if at your LEAP procedure, they said, by the way, this puts you at risk for preterm labor and you should discuss with your OB a cerclage. Or at your first and second and third and fourth appointments, hey, by the way, this is what we're tracking. Cerclage is on the table. It's one of the things we're considering, but these are the pros, these are the cons. And what do you think? You know, and then it could have been this discussion that you were clued in that there was something to even be concerned about, rather than just when there's an emergency, that's the first time they let you know.
Correct. I mean, they had my history. Right. They had all my documents, unless they didn't review it beforehand. But
right. That's their job. Not you. Like, it's not your job to know all of the things that you know now.
Oh my goodness! When I look back now, I'm like, whoa! Like, now I have this knowledge. Now when I see my patients clinically, it comes up in session. They're like, Sowania, I just had one recent. I want to have this procedure done, and they're 20 something years old, no kids yet. I'm like, I just want to let you know if you're done. And once again, her OB did not mention it to her. This is in 2020. Right. Did not mention it to her. She's like, whoa, thank God you told me this.
You can't give informed consent if they're not informing you fully. Correct. You know, because it's one thing to, you know, if you're a candidate for a LEAP procedure, I'm assuming it's for precancerous cells or for some sort of thing that it's quote unquote worth it, like statistically, there's a reason they're recommending it. But you can't have a fair and fully balanced conversation unless you know all of the risks. And they're doing women a disservice by not looping them into their care. They're treating us as if we don't have enough brain cells to make decisions about our own body, which is a theme across the country that we have. But it's not just about huge things like abortion and, you know, that sort of thing. It really comes down to even conversations like this, that had you had it during your LEAP procedure or before your LEAP procedure, and then in the early stages of your pregnancy, it likely would have made it less traumatic. Maybe. I mean, it still sounds like it was going to be traumatizing.
Oh my goodness. Traumatizing. I wind up giving birth. I go into spread.
Okay. Yeah. So let's get, so you were discharged from the hospital at a certain point. Is that right? Before you gave birth?
Yes.
So is that like you just.
For my mental health. For my mental health.
Oh, yes. Tell us more about that. Okay.
Yes.
What was that discussion like?
So so the OB that's a part of that group, one of the OBs was like, you're not doing well. She was like, it doesn't seem like, she noticed, you know, all the other OBs were males. Uh-huh. So I don't know if that has something to do with it, and they're not moms. So she one of the doctors, I love her, Dr. Lashar, she was like, Sowania, you know, it seems like, you know, your cervix is okay. Like, if you could have the baby. She discharged me about 32 weeks, I think, 32 weeks. And she was like, you're okay. You know, you could go home. It's Easter Sunday. This is affecting you. And you have to be home with your family, you know, and get ready to have this baby. And you being stuck in the hospital for months is not helping you emotionally. And I'm so glad that someone validated me and was able to hear me out. My husband, you know, I got him on board to advocate for me because I needed someone else there to advocate for me. And I think that's one of the issues that ties back to the Black mortality rate, maternal health, that we'll get into. But yes. So then I got discharged Easter Sunday, gave birth May 6th, like literally a couple weeks. Yeah. And she was in a NICU for a couple weeks because of her low birth weight. Mm-hmm. She was born 5 pounds, 1 ounce.
And what was her gestation?
I remember Mother's Day, just being there. I'm sorry?
What was her gestation when she was born? Like how many weeks?
36 weeks.
Okay. All right. So you got her to a safe point.
Yes. Yep. And, you know, it was very traumatizing going back and forth, going home without my baby, you know, with no support. Mind you, my family's far. My parents work crazy hours. My brothers were away at college. It was hard.
I'm so sorry, Sowania. I'm really sorry that happened and that you had to endure that. And I know that there is value in the trauma and that it helps us grow and it helps us move into this career. But wouldn't it be great if like people could just stop getting traumatized so we don't have to have all this growth?
Oh my gosh. I'm like, but it helped me to become more resilient. Yeah. It strengthened me as a mom, as a woman. It really, I had to pick up by my bootstraps and really learn and educate myself and see what is going on and do my own research and where are these gaps? Why are these gaps there? What is going on? And when I had my second one, we really planned this one, our second one, that was planned, fully planned, and I didn't have a baby shower because I didn't have that. I had a baby welcoming party, but you didn't have, so the second one, we had the baby shower. They knew in advance. I switched to Dr. Wilshire at that point. They gave me I didn't want to do the cerclage. I did hormone injections every week, gave birth to a full-term baby, and didn't have to be hospitalized.
But that's almost an example of exactly what I'm talking about. Like now that you have the information, if that information was shared with you and those options were laid out on the table, it would have felt so different for that first. Oh, yeah. So it sounds
I had more control.
Yeah, you have the control. You still don't have a cervix that's whole, right? Like you can't just like advocate away your problems, but to have this issue and then to be able to have the information and the voice and the agency and the power in the situation, it feels really different. And I would imagine, thank goodness the baby came full term, but I would imagine if you ended up in the same situation with having to go back to the hospital and having to deal with preterm labor, it would have felt different in that you knew you had made the choice for how you wanted your care to look and you were, aware of the options in front of you.
That's right. I felt empowered because I had a choice and I know what my options were and I know what to expect. Yeah. Ahead. My husband, I knew what to expect, and so we're like, okay, this is what's going to happen. And boom, full-term baby, healthy, nursed, boom. And then our third one, same thing, boom. My cervix was too thick. They were going to induce me. Too thick. They were like, what? The doctor was floored, didn't understand what's going on. She's like, we may have to induce you. Sowania, it was crazy. I was like, I was so blessed and thankful that I had the resources to support, and I had a doula the second time as well.
I wanted to ask about if you could speak as someone who has had doula support, what did that look like? Because I think there's a misconception, and maybe it's perfectly true, but that the doulas just show up on the day of. But like, I know I as a doula, but I'm wondering about your doula, did they work with you through these types of questions and how to talk to your doctor and your concerns during pregnancy? How did you find your doula? How did you learn about doulas? Why did you choose to have one?
Yeah, so I attended, there's a group in Smithtown on Long Island where I attended nursing, like breastfeeding classes.
Is this CSF?
Yes, CFA?
CFA, something Family Alliance.
Child Family Alliance, yep.
Yes, that's such a wonderful organization.
Wonderful organization. They have everything, and they partner with my OB's office. So I attended all the, I wanted to take classes again. I wanted to do it. The first time I didn't get the opportunity to do it the right way. So the second time, I took all the breastfeeding classes or all the classes on family, with my little one, learning with sibling class that she took with us. Then we took the breastfeeding class with the doula. Then we also took like the basics, newborn basics class. That's what we took. And then from there, I said, I'm a doula, the lady who was teaching the course. This is what we provide. We could come to the hospital, help advocate for you. It's like, oh my gosh, that would really have helped me the first time around, and I don't know how to breastfeed because the first time I didn't get to breastfeed. I bottle fed and I gave formula. And so I really wanted that. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm taking these classes. I need support. And I know that's too much. My mom didn't nurse us. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to hire somebody. So the doula came. She did not come to the hospital because I gave birth sporadically. Like it was just like really fast. Remember, I do give birth really, like literally, like really fast. So she did come to the house And she came to my parents' house too.
Oh, wow.
And because I stayed at my parents' house for a couple of weeks while my husband worked. And she helped me, with latching, with my little one, Nastasia, helped, like cook for me, clean for me, just take the babies I need so I could take a nap and get a breather, help me, fold my laundry, call the doctor to make any appointment and follow up for me. I told her if I had any symptoms, just to make sure, I need any symptoms of preeclampsia, to watch out, my bleeding, how much I was bleeding postpartum, just talking, she was just a support for me that was there.
Yeah.
Like a second mom.
Like you had someone for you instead of
Correct.
someone there for baby. It was someone to care for you and support you so that you could take care of the baby.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, the best.
So wonderful.
It was the best. It was the best. And she was a lactation consultant and that.
Yeah.
So she even weighed the baby there. I have pictures, like she came with her little coat. She weighed the baby for me, like I said, she discovered the tongue tie. She gave me, I still have my email, all the documents she scanned to me with how to increase my milk supply, what should I be taking, what foods to be mindful of, and what websites to go on, to get to other support from other moms. Like she broke down everything to me in detail, everything.
It sounds so lovely to, these two stories, one where you're on your own, you're scared, you're essentially undergoing a trauma, trying to stay positive, trying to use the tools available to you, but really having to have this internal resilience versus having someone come in and care for you and take that mental, emotional, and physical load off of you so that you can rest and restore and connect with your community and have the tools at your fingertips and really just have the energy to mother your baby because all of that is done for you. That sounds just so lovely.
Thank you. Yeah, it was fantastic. I loved it.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. So it sounds like that experience has now catapulted you into doing this and supporting mothers and their mental health as a career. Can you talk a little bit about how those experiences then led you to where you are now, which is your own private practice, seeing mothers and working with people as they transition into parenthood?
Yes. So I have been in private practice, I would say, I've been working in the field since 2013, so quite a while. But like I said, the reason why I went into this niche is because of my own personal experiences. I have a training in eye movement desensitization reprocessing, so that's EMDR. And EMDR is fantastic. I've used it with a lot of my moms who have experienced any birth trauma, and it has done a world of wonders for them. Like
I did not know that you did EMDR. I am such a huge fan of EMDR. My mother is a licensed clinical social worker. She has private practice. We might have talked about this, but EMDR is the way I learned about it way back when she learned about it and took training. She's always taking training. She's on to new things with inner voice, but EMDR is very exciting. And it's all about process. It just blows my mind. And it's like a whole field to me that's so interesting where it's any trauma. It's not just birth trauma, but birth trauma is trauma. And it takes you could speak to it more. I'm just going to blurt out all the things I know about EMDR. And you essentially, when you're going through a trauma, your brain doesn't file the memory the way that it would file waking up and going to get coffee. And your normal day-to-day non-traumatizing events get stored away in your memory, and your traumatic events go into a new and different place. And so what you do with EMDR, and please expand on this, is you do bilateral stimulation, whether it's with vibrators in your hand or walking or movement with your eyes to help you as you're talking about your memories, slot them away in your non-alarm zones. And I remember my mom talking about the patients, people who had undergone horrible, rape and assault and really bad things that had just literally been paralyzed by this trauma. And they would do this extended EMDR session. And then the next week they would come back and just go, it still happened. And I still remember all of it, but it just doesn't have the power anymore. It's not paralyzing me. It's not taking over. And it's just, oh, I'm so excited. Can you speak a little bit more about your experience doing EMDR
Yes.
therapy with mothers?
So in my experience working, well, like you said, you could use EMDR with any trauma.
Mhm.
And with the moms that I've seen, especially recently, right before, like I was pregnant during the, well, we're in a pandemic still. So in the, so during the lockdown, I was
Yes,
pregnant. So
there you
when we opened back up in June, I gave birth on Juneteenth, actually,
go. Oh,
ironically,
wow.
my son,
Wow.
my first son,
Yeah.
it's crazy. But
That's awesome.
so I was seeing a lot of women remotely, right, because of the pandemic. And I was like, oh my gosh, how many do EMDR remotely? So I had to figure it out.
Mm.
So the butterfly tapping, usually I use the TheraTapper in
Mhm.
office when I see them in person, but there was like a handful of women that I was seeing during the lockdown. And I was able to basically, in my experience, while I'm doing it virtually, do the butterfly tapping here on the chest
Mhm.
and reprocess the memories that those moms had. Whether it's even some moms experience, feeling isolated or alone postpartum.
Mhm.
That may have been something traumatizing for them that they're able to reprocess, during, my experience with moms recently. So the whole point of that is only within a few sessions, I see that I notice a significant progress or change. I would say 2 to 4 sessions. And the whole point of it is that they'll make more progress in therapy in less time with the EMDR in therapy,
Mhm.
versus traditional talk therapy. So their brain is reprocessing those memories and painful experiences that you have and exchange with that and resolving those painful experiences so they'll be more at peace. So for example, a mom may experience like feeling isolated and alone or giving birth, and their spouse or family wasn't there, and the feelings of anxiety attached to that, and being alone home with no doula, no support. A lot that has come up, ironically, for a lot of my moms, feeling that aloneness, and they don't even know that there's doula, there's supports there.
Mhm.
So reprocessing something like that. And literally, for example, I saw one mom for 4 sessions before I went on leave. I recently saw her recently, and it was like nothing.
Mm.
4 months later, I'm doing well, I'm doing great. Just to check, like, I've been exercising since you're out, Sowania. I'm taking care of myself. I'm eating great. I'm doing good. I'm, meditating. I'm like, she's 2 months postpartum, was struggling with severe anxiety, did
Mhm.
not want to go on meds. And I'm like, wow, like that is so awesome. You know,
It feels miraculous, to be honest with
it's,
you. Like
yes, it's
the
like a miracle.
EMDR, I think, is really under talked about and underutilized as a way to address birth trauma
Oh
and
my God.
trauma just surrounding the maternal experience. One of the things I love about it in particular is it's a thing that comes up in a lot of the conversations I have with practitioners, is that there's like this disconnect in how we approach mental health and physical health, and we look at them as two separate things, and EMDR kind of starts to marry that idea that like what we do with our bodies and how we interact with our bodies affects our emotional and physical and spiritual health, because you can't parse the two out. I know
No.
they do it for insurance purposes, but like as
Yeah.
a practitioner that's addressing a whole person problem, we have to look at it with the physical along with the mental and emotional. And EMDR seems to bridge that gap in a highly effective way.
Yes. And like, to piggyback on what you're saying, I'm glad you brought that up. PTSD is innately in our body.
Mm.
That's what neurologists say. It's living in our body. For example, let's say you get in a car accident and you get hit on, have a head-on collision. Your body will respond to any car when you get back in that vehicle. Is that not process, that experience, by flinching? There's people that experience that. I've experienced that. That's a trauma in itself. Trauma aren't just guys who go to out to war and return and come back. People are now recognizing and realizing, us in the field, and us as humans are recognizing that we can experience trauma on a regular basis, daily basis. Even right now with this pandemic, what we're going through. A lot of children being home, not having to see their friends, not having everything just shut down the way it was for the extended period of time that we did not expect. That was traumatizing.
Absolutely. There was a collective trauma, especially that like first month from like March 13th to April 3rd. There was just a collective. It was hard to, part of what I think made this pandemic difficult too, it was slow moving, you know. Other traumas, it's like, it's a day of trauma. Even your story is actually different because it is an extended sort of a thing. It's not just one hard day. It's days and days that turn into weeks that turn into months. And the pandemic is a lot like that. And there's also like no one to look to who's okay, because it was everybody in the world.
Exactly.
It was very unsettling for me.
It's like all over the world.
Yeah.
You know, it's international. And, you know, like you said, you know, it's something that's collective, that is a trauma that, you know, we are facing as humans on a regular daily basis. So it's pushing through and getting the resources, the therapy, the supports, and being aware and grounding ourselves. That's back to what we were saying about the trauma in our body. The way that we can cope through that is grounding ourselves, doing exercise like yoga, you know, meditative work, you know, also to EFT, emotional freedom technique. That's another thing that I'm trained in. So tapping. Yeah. So a lot of practitioners are including that in treatment. And that really, it's based off the Chinese meridian. There's different pressure points on the body where you could collapse those fears, anxieties when they're coming on. So those are all under the umbrella of mindfulness techniques that you could utilize. You know, the deep breathing, the meditating, tapping, you know, so those are techniques. Like when I would do EMDR with my patients, they, you know, they may have some flashbacks between sessions, and I would encourage them, hey, document, keep track of any dreams or any flashbacks that you have. And then I'm going to teach you, first step is they have phases with the EMDR. And I'm going to teach you these skills so that when that comes up at a session, you know how to handle it head on, you know?
Amazing. That's absolutely amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for doing that work. It's incredible. I just want to switch gears a little bit before we run out of time. Can we talk about Black maternal health, Black maternal mortality, Black maternal mental health, and how that impacts you and how that drives your work as a Black woman, as a Black mother, and as a Black maternal mental health specialist?
So, you know, as a Black woman and mom, in our, I would say, I can't speak for all Black women out there, but I know in my experience, as also Caribbean, Black, Asian mom and mother, you know, we're taught to press through. You know, our moms, our grandmothers, you know, they show examples for us to be strong Black women, right? When you're in pain, when you're going through something, you know, you're going to get through it. You push through it for your family, for your husband, you know. So when we're, you know, like mental health is not something that's really spoken about, you know, it's shunned about, it's shamed. And when you're, as a mom, when you're either postpartum, pregnant, you know, I've gotten messages from women and extended women in my family. You're going to be fine. You don't need any pain meds. Push through. You're going to be fine. You could just do it. You could, you know, those are the messages that you get. And unfortunately, it ties in now here with, you know, our death rate, the Black maternal, you know, mortality rate.
Sorry, I don't want to, is that you squishing the bottle? Okay, that's what that noise is. Okay. No, so yeah, what I'm hearing, there's so much to say about Black maternal mortality and Black maternal health. One thing I just want to pick apart, because it's not something I can speak to as a white woman, and I just want to like highlight it, is this idea of raising strong Black women and being strong Black women, and how that is awesome and valid and amazing and powerful and great, but how that has to be balanced with not dismissing Black women and not telling them to suck it up without support, right? Like it sounds like there's greatness in raising a generation of strong Black women and of passing along that cultural and that, you know, that architecture, I'm not saying the right word, but archetype of a strong Black woman. But what you're saying too is like, Yeah, it's great to hear that, but at the same time, to be told while you're struggling that you just need to just need to be a little stronger. That sounds very difficult.
Yeah, it's, and research has shown that Black mothers keep dying, at a accelerated rate like after giving birth. Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to experience a pregnancy-related death than white women. Black women are more likely to experience preventable maternal death compared with white women. And Black women's heightened risk of pregnancy-related death spans, income, and education levels. So I know I've heard this on the spectrum. Even during the pandemic, there is 2 people here in New York that recently passed away. Actually, a doctor.
Yes.
Just a couple weeks ago.
The resident.
Correct. Yeah. A resident. An attorney I know that passed away 3 years ago.
There's a woman in the Bronx also who passed away because she didn't get the proper health care. I want to just punctuate something for people who are not familiar with Black maternal health and the disparity in the rates that you just talked about. I just want to make sure it's super duper clear, because I know you know and I know, but like for anyone who's listening who hears you say those rates that Black women are dying and Black women are more at risk and white women are not, it is not because of their race. It is because of racism. So there's not like a biological thing that a Black woman is more at risk because of XYZ. It's literally there is racism that is systemic, and it is at every level of care, and it is really hard to root out. But there is, when you adjust, I went to this presentation by Dr. Martine Hackett at Hofstra University through the Birth Justice Warriors. If you haven't seen it or interacted with her, I'm going to put you in touch with her. She's incredible, the work she's doing. But like, they held this birth equity breakfast, and it was mind blowing because they put out the statistics, like Black women are dying and Black women's babies are dying at higher rates. And then, like literally they opened it up for all the white people in the room to be like, well, so why would you think? And like people would raise their hands, like higher levels of diabetes, higher levels of poverty, higher levels of high blood pressure. And they just started adjusting the numbers for each of those things. And it didn't matter. If you took the same healthy status of person, the Black women died more. If you took rich Black women that lived in super wealthy areas with super high incomes, they were dying more than white people who lived in poverty. If you took college graduate Black women and compared them to white women who didn't ever graduate high school, Black women still dying more. So it's just, it was this mind-blowing event for me, because it was like, oh, this is not, first of all, something that's just because they're Black, that there's something biologically different. It's literally just like the amount of melanin in your skin, melanin in your skin. And it's really an issue of that you can't outschool, you can't out-earn, you can't move away from, that there's just racism in the system. And I think to a certain extent, it was great to hear your story in the context of that conversation, because you almost lost your baby. And it was due to the failures of the system ahead of you. Those conversations could have and maybe should have been had earlier. And so I want to hear you speak on, nobody wants to hear me speak on this. I just want to make sure it's really clear that it's not that Black women are dying because of their race. It's because of the racism that's directed at them in both small ways. I think there's this idea of like, I'm not racist. I like, I have a Black friend, or I like Black people, but like, it's the system is set up in such a way. So there's really overt and then covert racism as well. So please continue. I just wanted to make that really clear for the other white people who are listening who didn't know about any of this or don't know about this, because I know I had that eye-opening moment.
Yeah, it's I'm glad that you made it clear, Kaitlin, because it's a combination of the institutional racism in our society and within our healthcare system. And unfortunately, as the stats, I said before, Black women are at a higher rate than white women, and then Hispanic women are 11.8% actually. Wow. So it's actually here. It says here, pregnancy-related deaths by the race in the US, but this is from 2016. So 42.8% of deaths. And it goes by Native American women, then Asians, then whites, and then Hispanic, in that order. So, I mean, back to like my personal experience, you know, there was a gap there. I don't know. I wonder if I was Caucasian, if it would have been different, if it would have been different experience for me. You know, I will say this, when, you know, I had the other kids, you know, I constantly talked about the stats with my family, with my husband. I said, listen, anything happens, you have to be there to advocate for me. You know, for example, the story about the attorney wife from New York, you know, that passed away a couple of years ago. That story really hit home for me, because he really advocated for his wife, and she had preeclampsia. And he really advocated for her, and she was bleeding out in the hospital, in their care. And they kept saying, well, we're going to get back to her. We're going to get to her. We're going to get to her. And time went by. If they addressed it and intervened sooner on, she would be here today with her sons. It's so sad. But it's
awful.
It's the racism. And I think that also goes back to the thought that Black women, that we could handle, and that also goes in history. There's actually that history shows that black women could handle things. Black women were nurses. They nursed babies, actually, of slave owners. They really did back in the days. So it just, all of that is tied into each other. And there's even like, I've even done my research in the last year, how, you know, Black women, when obese, were starting to like go to school and understand the woman's anatomy. Women, Black slaves, Black women were used. They were picked apart. They were used
without anesthesia. I forget the name of the doctor, but like father of gynecology would operate on women who were enslaved. I don't want to call, you know, I'm trying to be sensitive to the language. On women who were enslaved, they would operate on them without anesthesia. And it goes along with that idea of strong Black women. And I love the idea of talking about strong Black women, but it's also like, here's the flip side of the coin, is when it's used in a horrific way to dismiss women, to harm women. Oh my goodness. That's just awful. It also, like, Serena Williams comes to mind, that she had to advocate for herself, and she's freaking Serena Williams. Like,
Serena Williams.
She should not be at risk. And that's a great example of, like, you can't out famous and out accomplish the racism, because it just exists. And I want to also add something on, and I hope it's helpful, but they're not listening to anyone. Women as a whole are not being listened to, because as a doula, I've supported Black women who have been treated, you know, subpar, for sure, and I've seen the microaggressions in their care. But I've also, like, I remember supporting like a very wealthy white woman, and she had every privilege that exists to her, and she just got the worst treatment, and she was just and she had this fancy doctor and fancy hospital, and she got the worst treatment. And I remember leaving that birth knowing what I know about Black maternal mortality and racism in the care, and thinking, man, if she doesn't have a shot, like, who does? You know, because this woman of all the women hired a doula and has the money and has the resources, and still was just dismissed. And it's so infuriating to watch the system. But I think there's an issue. So I guess I'm trying to say, it's not just Black women that are being dismissed and not listened to. I think across the board, women are being treated poorly during their maternal health care experience. But I think that you add racism, and both racism on the personal level from the practitioners, but then also this systemic racism. Going back to the pain levels, I wish I could, I'll try and look up the resources, but this is an example of systemic racism or racism that's not necessarily like intentional from the person, but in nursing schools, they're still in the textbooks, they're still teaching that, and not all, I'm sure there's a bunch of nurses listening to this going, I didn't learn about that, but there are still nursing textbooks out there that are teaching that pain levels are different according to the person's race, which is which again, like if you're training the staff, then they're just leaning on their training. What, you know, but there has to be changes made at higher levels, you know, like if something happens and it's a racist incident, it's not necessarily because that person that was treating you hates Black people or wants you to have a worse outcome, but sometimes it's literally just the training is poor and the systems and institutions in place are not addressing these things that seem small, right? This idea of like Black women are stronger, and that actually, like, to an untrained ear can sound like a positive thing. Man, Black women are so strong, you know, until you stop offering them anesthetics and ignore them when they're saying, hey, I have a problem, I don't feel right, I need this, I need, you know, and they're not getting the medical care that they need.
You know, what comes to mind for me when you just said that about the data in the textbooks, you know, how the connection is there to slavery. Like, okay, you know, for example, you know, or people who have been enslaved, you know, if they endured this pain, then they don't need anesthesia. This group of people don't need anesthesia. Right. Because innately within their genetics, within them, right, they don't, you know, pain is passed down from generation to generation. So that just gave me like a aha like moment just now, like, oh shoot, like, oh man, wow.
Yeah, and it's these old, very, very racist ideas that then get passed along down to like 2020, where it's like, how are we still failing Black women and I mean, we're failing all the women, but the Black women are at, and their babies are at significantly more risk than.
So definitely for Black women, you know, I encourage them to, you know, seek like a platform like Be Her Village, because you have all the resources that you need right there at your fingertips that your family could pour into you, or your friends or colleagues, or, you know, your community can for you. You know, everything is right there. Your resources are right there with Be Her Village. I think it's an awesome platform just, you know, for everything just right there. But, you know, I strongly recommend for, you know, for Black women, you know, I hope that they'll seek treatment, seek the services. If they don't have a village, you know, seek a doula, you know, take more time off too. That all ties into taking more time off.
Yes.
That's another.
That's a big part. I'm glad you brought up Be Her Village, because that is what I've learned about the Black maternal experience and the disparities. That was one of the, I mean, there's a few different motivations behind this, but really access to care. And our registry, for those of you who are listening, is a cash gift registry. And so what that means is you find the service providers you want and you connect your bank account, and your friends and family can fund your bank account directly, because I just don't think we have the time to wait for the government and for these larger organizations to catch up. I really believe that the answer is somewhere. I mean, I also hope the government and all the organizations take up, you know, the lead on this, but I also think while waiting for those massive changes to happen, and while waiting for us to get the racist in chief out of office, like, we know that he's not going to be doing anything, we can micro fund and have our immediate communities funding mothers and funding the care that they need, so they can have postpartum doulas, so they can have postpartum mental health care, so that they can have a doula and childbirth education, and they can have these services that are not luxuries. And that's I love that we're having this conversation, because your story really highlights it's not a luxury to have a doula. It's not a luxury to have mental health care. It's not a luxury to have support. It is a necessity. It is part of motherhood. It's what our communities should be doing for us. But honestly, everybody's too busy working to make ends meet. We can't go to each other's homes and take care. So let's shower each other with the funds and the support that we need. And let's just kind of do it on our own instead of waiting for somebody else to do it. That is a big part of our mission, is to just change the source of the funding. Instead of going to Bye Bye Baby and buying, you know, an expensive crib and stroller and bouncer and all these devices, like, why don't we just fund the mamas, and the mamas will get what they need. And they're not luxuries. They are directly impacting maternal health outcomes, which is so powerful when we start funding women. It gets me really, really excited.
Yes, Kaitlin. And also too, another thing others should think about is when we take care of ourselves as moms, then we can be the best moms that we can be for our children, our families, and for our spouses. If we're running ourselves to the ground, there's not going to be anything left for us to give.
That's
so
right.
Why not have, all of these resources for you to continue to take care of yourself? In other cultures, for example, I know in China, they have everything set up for them postpartum. And actually, for example, in our family, my culture, like I said, I'm Haitian.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an island in Haiti. I mean, an island in Haiti, though, an island in the Caribbean. And we basically have a tradition postpartum where we do a bath, like a traditional 6-herb bath.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like our tradition. If you don't do this bath, like, it's like the end of the world if you don't get this bath done. And, I made sure that, for every kid, that's the one thing that I made sure I had all those things there. But in China, they also practice that as well.
Almost every traditional culture, or even just culture, in almost every traditional culture, there is some sort of, in China, it's 40 days and broths and stews. In Haiti, it's this bath that you have to take, but there is some sort of recognition that the mothers need care. And in America, that doesn't exist. In America, there's no maternity leave. There's no paid maternity leave. There's no one being sent to your house. The fathers are not getting paternity leave, or, if it's another woman, there's no parental leave. They're just systematically, on a government level and on a cultural level, we are not celebrating mothers. And that's what Be Her Village is trying to change, because we have baby showers and baby gifts and a bunch of plastic stuff to take care of the babies. And we have maternity clothes. And that's it. That's where it ends. And then the mom is on her own trying to cope with all of this. And so if we can create this network of businesses and get funding directly into the hands of the women who need it, I think we can make some really, really big impacts.
Definitely. I'm excited to be a part of Be Her Village.
So everyone, as we wrap up here, Sowania is listed as a Be Her Village partner. You can find her services on Be Her Village, add them directly to your gift registry, get funded, get in a room with Sowania, because she's awesome, as you can tell from this wonderful hour we just got to spend together. This will certainly not be the last time that we discuss and have these conversations, because I feel like each of these topics could have been at least an hour-long conversation. And certainly Black maternal health, we have mental health and physical health and maternal health. There's a lot of work to be done. So thank you so much, Sowania, for joining us. This was an incredibly interesting and informative conversation. I learned a whole lot, and I'm really grateful for you for spending the hour with me. Thank you so much. Of course,
thank you for this platform.
Of course, and thank you all for listening. Catch you next time on the Be Her Village podcast.